Out a scheme.
Who knows?
Yeah, hold on, Gavin, I got you.
Hiring. I wanted to be able to take off 2 months without pay
Well,
every
Gavin should be coming in.
Take a month.
We have a seat for him.
month in the
Yeah, right here. What's going on here?
Hey, Gavin.
Hey, everybody.
It's too late.
But then all hell broke loose during the pandemic, and so it's like, yeah, never mind. That was it.
Okay. Right on time. Cool.
This was higher, it must have switched.
Good evening. This is the Yellow Springs Planning Commission, our Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 meeting. If we could do the roll call.
Indeed, Stiles,
Here.
Green,
Here.
Zaremski.
Here.
DeVore Leonard.
Here.
Osterholm.
Here.
Also present is planning and zoning and economic and lots of other things. Person, Meg Leather. I forget your new title, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you, Judy. And then we'll review the agenda. Does anyone have anything to change on it? If not, then we'll go down to reviewing the minutes. Does anyone have any changes, corrections, whatever, to the minutes? If not, I'm going to move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, then we'll go to communications. We have, do we have anything other than what's listed, Judy?
We do not.
Okay, we have the one from Matt Raska and then 2 from me. And I wanted to mention the one from Matt Raska about strong towns. I think we have done almost everything that he has listed. We allow accessory dwellings in all the housing areas. We have no minimum size of a house, so you can build a tiny house anywhere you want. And we do have a size on lots. I think it's 50 by 100. Is that right, 50 by 100?
It's different per zone.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we went down to the smaller one so that it wouldn't be as large. And then I was thinking there was one other thing that we had.
There's a recommendation in there that, so the things that we didn't do is that they wanted to be able to do duplexes and triplexes without having any permission.
Without having permission.
Which we do duplexes, basically.
Yeah, but you just,
Permitted by right is how they word it.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that I noticed.
The other thing, we've streamlined the approval process, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
really a lot with me being here.
Well, and he had about that there'd be no lot size.
Right.
And I guess I don't support that. I think that you need to have a minimum lot size.
And repealing parking, which is always so
Yeah.
talked about, parking.
But even in the write-up, it makes mention of it being more applicable to places that have public transportation and, things like that.
Yeah.
And as I brought up the other day at the meeting with the Windsor folks, we don't even have sidewalks in,
In a lot of
parts of the
town,
village,
yes.
so it's sort of different here.
Betsy's working on that.
Yeah,
She's working hard on it.
I'd love to see more sidewalks.
yeah.
We've had a lot added over the last decade since I've been back, so.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess we'll go on to the council and committee reports. So we have the Active Transportation Committee.
I have a couple things just to mention. Active transport update relative to the schools. And this all ties, well, okay. The one thing going on, there's various grants in process associated with state routes, safe routes to school, to work on a path going from Dayton Street down to Mary's Way, along in front of the high school and, where all that construction will be, to make it wider, and to also include crosswalks, flashing school zone signs, and stuff like that. As far as the village goes, the one thing that was mentioned was I got the initials wrong. The proposed development by the soccer fields at LI, what are the initials?
We're not allowed to say it out.
LIHTC, low income housing tax credit.
Low income house tax. I just was missing one letter. Okay. The proposal's progressing. Maybe it's already been submitted. I'm not even sure.
Yes.
And also noting, if accepted, there will be public meetings, opportunities to discuss the design. Just to mention, next week, there's in Planning Commission, there's also like active transport, there's like a regional active transport group, a whole bunch, that's for the whole region. They have a meeting next month. They'll actually be down the street here at the Great Council State Park. I hope to attend. And the other thing, just to mention that I haven't mentioned yet at the active transport meeting, that Bike Yellow Springs has managed to obtain for free 20 bike racks of the inverted U style, and we snagged a bunch of them for free. And they're being stored at Agraria. We're going to let Agraria have a number of them. And the rest of them, there's discussion in process in terms of what to do with them. There's also a slight chance of there being more available, in which case, if there's really a lot available, we might actually be able to get some to help with the schools, because they'll have an obligation to put in a bunch of bike racks. And if we can get a bunch for free, that just helps. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you. Okay, council, Gavin.
Yeah. Okay, so from January 21st, council passed the repeal of overlay districts as recommended by Planning Commission. Council also passed the repeal and replace for section 1260.03, which now reads as follows, and this is that thing that we were talking about around the arterial streets, and we need to get the language, so here's the language. On an arterial street, no driveway shall be located within 100 feet of another driveway on the same side of the street, and no closer than 125 feet from another driveway on the opposite side of the street, measured center line to center line. That's number I. And then J is, on an arterial street, in any case, no driveway shall be located within 150 feet of a street intersection, measured from pavement edge to pavement edge.
So
Got it? Oh, go ahead.
what is an arterial street?
Meg, do you want to give the official
I
definition?
mean, tell me which they are, which ones in general.
Right. Xenia, basically. Dayton is kind of borderline.
Yellow Springs, Fairfield.
Yeah, I mean, we have classifications, but so does MVRPC, the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission. And according to MVRPC, it's only Xenia.
Okay. Okay, I was going to say, because my street, we have driveways right next to each other, so. And I was hoping I wasn't one of them.
Well, you'd be, whatever it is in that you can say, your driveway's already there, you don't have to take it out. It's new built.
Oh, right.
New build.
Non-conforming, legally
Yeah,
non-conforming.
you're legally non-conforming.
Got it. Okay, so outdoor storage and recreational vehicles were also added to this section's title, and then council also passed ordinance 2025-03, allowing zoning administrator review of permitted uses occupying buildings of 5,000 square feet or greater that we had talked about previously. Okay, February the 3rd. Council heard the 2 right-of-way vacations requested by Antioch, which Planning Commission heard and recommended to council for approval. Then on the 18th, we held a second reading and public hearing on those 2 right-of-way vacations. Hearing pushback from the abutting property owner who requested concessions on the part of Antioch, council moved to table with the understanding that Antioch's Board of Trustees would review the requests prior to the next council meeting. You following so far? It's a fun blow by blow. Okay. March the 3rd, if you're waiting on what happened, after receiving information that Antioch's board was unwilling to concede anything until after the vacation requests were approved, and with the understanding that most of the concessions are not possible unless the rights of way are vacated, council approved both ordinances, thus vacating both rights of way as recommended by Planning Commission. Council agreed to 2 work sessions, one to identify village goals and the other to identify goals for the village manager. Those sessions will be held March 31st and April 7th. And council was informed that developer Woda Cooper had submitted the application to the Ohio Housing Finance Agency for the low-income housing tax credit funding for a proposed housing development to be located at East Enon and Dayton Yellow Springs Rail. And I think we're supposed to hear back in June.
Oh, in June. I thought it was May.
Yeah,
Two
it
dates
would be
on
the
the,
end of May,
goals
beginning of
meeting.
June. They
Okay.
haven't
31st.
released the date yet.
Of March and April 7th.
I keep checking.
Yep. The 2 dates were March 31st and April 7th.
Thank you.
And are those open to the public?
They are open to the public,
But you can't make
but
comments.
you can't talk.
Yeah, you can just listen.
I think is basically what happens. But in all seriousness, if anybody has any input on what these goals ought to be, then sharing things with Judy to send to council to be considered by the 31st for village goals or the 7th for the village manager, respectively. That's the way to engage.
Okay, thank you, Gavin.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you all.
Okay, we have come to the part in our agenda where citizens' comments, and this is the opportunity for anybody who wants to speak of something that's not on our agenda to come forward and speak. So,
Only if it's not on the agenda? Or,
yes. If we're not having a public hearing on it, and we're not having any public hearings. So anything you would like to come and comment on, please do.
would it be okay to ask a couple of questions? That all went by kind of fast. I was,
You
Well,
wanna-
go ahead and come up
You go
and
up
introduce
identify
yourself.
and go.
hi, I'm Rick Sanders. I live on East Enon. So I just, when I came in at 1 or 2 after, were you talking about you were talking about that development that's going to be where the soccer fields are now?
The low-income housing tax credit project,
Yeah.
yes.
Right, mentioned, but we weren't having a meeting on it per se tonight.
Oh, okay. You were just talking about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. All right. And another thing that when you were speaking about, I believe it was March 30th or April 7th or something, for public comment on what development?
That's council goals meeting that the council's doing.
Okay.
It's like a workshop. You go listen, but you really can't really speak anything. But
Right.
would you say, turn them into Judy if you want to get something in on there? Something?
Just if you have input on council goals or village manager goals, to send them to the clerk, and then they would be shared with council members for consideration.
Okay. Very good. Council goals. All right. And really, I came to see if there was going to be any discussion about this large development that is apparently coming, from what I hear, on East Enon, that the farmland presently owned by Jim Clem, adjacent to the development that's just being finished.
Across the street? Or
talking about-
down the road going towards the
You're talking about behind Spring Meadows. You're talking
It's
about
on-
behind Spring Meadows? I don't,
Right.
it's not on the agenda, so it's just a matter of if it's a,
I haven't heard anything about that.
So I'm happy to, there is some discussion, really preliminary discussions on meetings we've had. There's not been an application submitted for consideration. Usually we use this forum typically, in most instances, when we receive an application. This property you're talking about is actually outside of the village limits, and so it would need to be annexed in, which requires multiple levels of applications with the township and with the planning commission and village council. And we do notice like neighbors in the area if that's going to happen and when the date and time of the public meeting and public comment period is, so that you can speak to it if we do get an application. But I'm happy to share more if you want to like meet or call or email with me. I can share. I don't know. I can keep you
My
on a
wife
list.
Kathy's been in touch, and
Oh, okay. Yeah,
she
yeah.
really
Kathy.
appreciates how
Yeah,
responsive
yeah,
you've been.
And where is this property?
It is right next to where they live. It would connect in with Spring Meadows.
And you know where Antioch, the book plate, Antioch
Yes.
Publishing is, the next thing.
Next parcel north of there.
Between that
next
and the
north.
solar field?
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, it is. And it's, you know, where there's that tower,
Yeah.
that cell tower, that's right on the edge.
I actually have a question on that. Wouldn't the township have to change zoning? What is it?
Yeah, so we
Wouldn't
would
that have to change their zoning
probably,
first?
Conversation.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
think that we have to be careful. There's
Sorry.
there's law about when they can talk about development. There's law that so if they start talking about it now and it hasn't been officially noticed, we could get in trouble legally. So, but as one-on-one with me, I'm happy to talk to you more and fill you in on what I know as much as possible.
Yeah.
Great, yeah,
So,
thanks.
so I'm just wondering, presumably then that I saw there was a for sale sign, so that property is sold?
You know, I'm not even involved in any of those conversations at
Yeah,
all.
okay,
I
whatever.
don't know if it's sold or
Is that
not.
the 5 acres?
Yeah.
that a big
So
sign
it
is
would
up
be a
for?
great idea not to talk about this as a
I don't
planning
think
commission
so.
right now.
Okay.
I am just saying.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay, then we'll move on. Any other citizens' comments? If not, then we will
Thank you.
stop. We do not have any public hearings. Old business is the review of the Planning Commission goals for 2025, and Meg has given us a write-up.
I've copied everything but that. Is there an extra copy of that? You want on the table?
Of what?
Packet.
Of just the goals? Okay. Thank you.
And so what Meg sent us was that the following goals were identified for staff to continue to work and to lead in 2025. Complete the ADU guide, add hyperlinking timeframe and inspections, and the zoning code cleanup, update PUD chapter and other cleanup. And then the following goals were identified for specific commission members to work on in 2025. The transient guest lodging, is there a limit to how many we want, need before impacts quality of life? And that was Green and Zirinsky. And then food trucks, is there a limit to the number or location before it impacts quality of life? And that was again Green and Zirinsky. And then the village recommends removing 3 goals from the Planning Commission's consideration. Keith's Alley, explore potential for new commercial activity center, address trash collection, improve pedestrian flow and safety. The first step is to evaluate the utilities and varied property ownership. And then inclusionary zoning has been explored in the recent past by an outside consultant that recommended against the policy due to the small size of the village. In addition, staff reviewed inclusionary zoning in 2024 in detail and has concerns about it limiting housing production and economic diversity and about the lack of resources to administer it correctly. And growth, we believe this should be moved to the village council and included as a part of their goal discussions coming up on March 31st, 2025. Any discussion?
Is that going to happen, that growth is going to be moved to the village council? Is this because it's on here? Is that?
That's what they're telling us.
You said you believe that it should, and does that mean that it will?
Well, here's the thing about it.
No, it's not.
It's so multifaceted that it's going to be talked about in some form or fashion when anyone talks about housing. It's going to be talked about with council in terms of any kind of economic development and/or housing. And then if Planning Commission, again, talks about growth, you can't separate it from all of those things. So I think it's appropriate. I think what Meg was, where she was going was, it makes more sense for council to say, what is it about growth that we want to have studied by what entities? What information do we want? What entities to provide to us? All right, you provide us with this. You provide us with this. And then council gets to wrap its arms around the idea as a whole, as opposed to, shoot, Planning Commission, figure out growth. Because
So that is an excellent summary of the theory of how it should work, I think. I think it's a great question that you asked, though, because practically it has never worked that way. So we end up in this kind of like catch-22 where it's like, hey, we should talk about this big picture thing. And then for any number of reasons, usually some kind of complex messiness is happening, but sometimes for, very concrete reasons, we don't talk about the big picture thing. And then we just kind of like kick it down the road and hope that something will happen someday. So I'm glad you brought it up, because I think I would sort of make a motion that, and this is not an official motion, but sort of make a note that this piece around growth sounds fine to me, the idea that we would theoretically talk about it on March the 31st. But knowing how we function or don't, I think we should make note that we might need to talk about it again and put it on our agenda to check back the next time and say, well, did we actually talk about it? Because what's happening already is that people are like, oh, we'll talk about that one time that we met for over 15 minutes about a topic. And it's entirely likely that we're not going to get to a whole bunch of the complexity in that one meeting.
So if I had an opinion about this and I wrote it in a letter, would I be allowed to do that and send it to you, and then you could give it to the council when they discuss on March 31st? Is that how that works?
Yes, just make very clear that you're speaking as you.
Okay. All right.
Which-
Private citizen me?
Well, and it's it's different that you're sending it to council and clarifying. If you clarify, this is something we were interested in looking at, however, there's a
Okay.
council thing, and here's what I want to say,
Yeah.
as opposed to you sending it to the Yellow Springs News. I mean, it's going in the
Yeah.
direction it should go.
Okay, all right. Okay. Because I have, okay.
Well,
All right.
and I'm sorry if you seem like put off a little bit by it. I did rush and put this together. I didn't
No,
have
I'm
much
not,
time.
I'm not put off. I just think that, like, I think we need
That wasn't the intent, is all I'm trying to
No,
say.
yeah,
I
I
probably
just-
wasn't too brief in throwing this together, did not.
No, I rather agree with Stephen, though, and what Gavin said is that I think, yes, indeed, it should start with council, and they should decide, if they want to send anything to planning and what we're to look at, but will that happen? And are we going to all keep saying,
Yeah, right.
we ought to talk about,
Yeah, I agree. I like that too.
Yeah.
So would it be a fair representation of my understanding of this group's response to this, both today and the last time we met about it, which is that we could be interested in talking about it, if so directed?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Okay.
And just to make note that Riley has a whole lot of information. He did an article in the paper. But he has a tremendous amount of information. And I was the one that was sort of going to take that on, and I was going to utilize him to talk to us about.
The city of Yellow Springs.
Or
We could just rename it the Village of Yellow Springs if we hit the city thing.
What's that?
We
There
could
is
rename
actually
it
a
the Village
community
of
in
Yellow
Ohio
Springs.
that rename themselves the Village of the City of, whatever it
The
was.
Village of the City of? Okay,
Yeah.
that'll work.
The City of the Village of, I'm sorry, because it happened to them.
Okay.
So I guess, could we just put it on the agenda for the next time to say, hey, let's check in about how the goal session went?
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's going to come up because that council report.
That Gavin worked so hard on.
And then I have to say, I was interested in us, and I know Meg has given us her opinion about inclusionary zoning, and I have done a lot of research on it, and I have utilized ABLE, the attorneys in ABLE, and they've done a lot of research, and they are the ones who produce the information that's in your packet. That they found small communities, because inclusionary zoning has been in existence since 1972 in some communities, and many of them think that it is working, and it is controversial. It seems to be most effective when you have incentives for the developer. But I know that we had discussed it, was it last spring, Gavin? And it went to council or something, and council wanted us to wait 6 months and wanted us to get back to it. And we never did, which was why I thought, okay, let's get back to it. And maybe the result is nobody supports it. And then we should just put an X through that. This is something that I know that in our community, there are a number of people who've been very interested in it.
So in a nutshell, what this means is that you're trying to have some some portion of the new housing that's built that's set aside to be affordable.
Yes.
And in many cases, there's incentives.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And it can be a small part, let's say like Windsor, what they're planning on doing in the one that we did the work session on, where YSO is. Like you'd say maybe 1 unit, 2 units, whatever.
I interpret this different, actually. My sense of when you talk about inclusionary zoning is actually, okay, when you first described like what the talk about, 1 or 3 units in some place, that becomes including affordable housing in developments, whatever.
Yes.
To me, inclusionary zoning is modifying zoning to eliminate various requirements broadly that are in the zoning. To me, that's a little different.
No, that's not what inclusionary zoning is. If you read what is in the back, and particularly read what was drafted as could be approved, and it's just a draft. In fact, I'm not even seeing it in mine. Oh, it's at the end, the inclusionary zoning proposal.
Is that?
Yeah, that's right on the last page of mine. So.
And you can make any,
Okay.
and you can make any
Yeah.
sort of changes to it.
Right. So and that's what I'm not clear on. What you wrote sort of addresses a certain number of units within, development, whereas the broader, actually, I guess it's a little different. This article.
That doesn't have anything to do with inclusionary
Yeah, that's different. I was confusing the two.
The sort of the purpose of inclusionary zoning is that ideally you want to have income levels living everywhere.
Yeah.
So you don't want like an apartment building. Ideally, you don't want like a low-income housing tax credit apartment building, which is simply low income. You want market rate in there. It's healthier for everybody. And it is hard to get, it's rare that any developer will just say, oh, by the way, I want to build 5% affordable units and sprinkle them around.
Yeah.
So this is a way of encouraging them by giving some incentives that they would do it. And the way that a lot of the communities did it, that I know Meg was concerned about, will the work for her department, is a lot of them will utilize like a nonprofit like Housng, that they would do the income stuff and keep track of how many units and people coming in on that.
So this is actually an excellent example of what we just talked about a moment ago, of where the theory and the practice do not line up. So we as a group said, hey, we need some guidance from council. We went to council, and then at council we said, we'll talk about it in 6 months. And then we never talked about it again. And no, we didn't ever talk about it again, right?
Yeah, there was that last memo I did about it, and then, yeah.
We talked about it, and then at the meeting, it was like, okay, well, there's some things we could do, some changes we could make, but looking into inclusionary zoning would be a bigger question, a bigger lift. Let's talk about it in 6 months, and then 6 months came and went. Correct?
Yeah, probably just not too long, over 6 months, but yeah.
But you're saying that you're saying from your perspective, you think that we brought it back up?
No,
and
not
then-
me.
No, I'm just saying that I don't think Meg's response was, it's complicated and we should wait. She was pretty direct in her response.
Oh, yeah.
I thought.
Meg's response was relative, didn't answer the question. It gave lots of information about it. It was council that basically was like, I don't know, and let's talk about this again in 6 months. And then we didn't, which is its own complex set of things that happen, of how do agendas get set and who decides what gets brought up and what doesn't. And this one fell into the black hole. Mm-hmm. And you can guess why. It's politics and priorities and things, but there's an example of when things fall into the black hole. So I think this one would also go on the list of, we didn't bring it back up. We could totally bring it back up. I'll say I don't think that there's the support to do more for it right now, but we didn't
You mean support on council?
support on council.
Okay.
But we didn't do that. We didn't say, no, don't do it. We said, we'll do it later. And we didn't do it later. So I think this is where, so my take is that this would be like another one that would go like growth on the list of, hey, council, maybe you should give some input on this. and that there may be people interested. Certainly, Susan, I'm generally interested in the topic. Yeah, there's interest from Planning Commission that's been expressed before, but until we get direction from council, we're not spending more time on it.
As well as, I think there's public sentiment on this. It isn't like, oh, I've never heard anybody talk about this. No, it's constantly coming up.
It has come up, yeah. Mary Ann McQueen was a real champion for it.
Yeah.
And so hasn't Brian House been.
So this makes me think that maybe we have liberalized all of these zoning things too much, because what do you have to offer a developer? If you had like big lot sizes and a lot of requirements for parking and all kinds of things, then you'd have something to give back.
Density is one that you can do, such as, and parking. I mean, there are some things that you could still do.
Yeah, but I'm not sure you actually need incentive. Like Steve was mentioning, there's now a limited number of incentives. As the way this is written and the way I've seen it presented before, you just set it up as a requirement. Heck with an incentive, you say X% of your housing needs to be such and such, period. And ultimately what they have to do is, in order to have X% at a certain rate, they then have to raise the rate at for Y%.
So
But that's not an incentive.
What I was saying is that the studies that I've read, and they've done, none of them are very complete in showing, what works and what doesn't. But they said that in general, it is better to offer incentives. That the developers are more likely to be agreeable to doing it when there are incentives involved. So you'd put it in there that, you do this and we're going to offer these incentives. I think one of the things Meg talked about was that you'd make one of the incentives a PUD. That if you wanted to do a PUD, okay, then this would be a requirement.
So, Meg, Judy, I guess if you can give guidance. So at the council meeting, we talked about doing the goals meeting for the village goals, and that I believe that Elise is going to be facilitating that conversation. So there's a staff member would be facilitating, the village council, and the, I assume department heads or like some subset of staff who would be coming up with the goals. So can one or some subset of you talk to Elise to basically say, hey, here's a couple topics, and then, because the facilitator basically has to figure out, okay, council shared some goals, staff shared some goals, then there's stuff like this that's coming out. It just so happens that our process is lining up with that. I don't know that this kind of stuff will be from any other group. And then maybe like if she's not going to be able to do this, could she just give us a heads up so that we can think about if there's some other place to put that discussion?
Yeah, sure. But we also I did talk to Johnny about this before. But the inclusionary zoning would be, I guess, new. But he is aware of the growth discussion coming to council.
And so the way I would, just so everybody has reasonable expectation, I'm assuming this is like, I don't know exactly how Elise is going to facilitate it, but there's going to be, like each of us on council wrote up a draft 5 goals and said, hey, here's things that we would prioritize. Ostensibly, there might be, 20 different things, and I don't know how we'll do it, but we might go through and something might just get voted out right away because nobody cares about it that much, and these might be on that list. We don't know. So this doesn't mean that we're going to talk about it for 2 hours. If anything, we'll be lucky to talk about anything for more than 5 minutes. And then, hopefully, if it becomes a goal, then we'll create space to talk about it for longer. Is that a fair summary? Okay. Okay, so then you're agreeing, staff is saying, we're going to talk to Elise, and if it's not going to be in there, to just check in or throw it into the mix to get some thing, then you'll follow back up. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Even though I don't want to move on, I'll move on. So I'm assuming, does anybody have any strong feelings about Keith Sally?
Well, I guess this is my broader, without looking at each individual thing, here's my broader sort of question. So I think the question becomes like, where does the guidance come from for how much time staff spends on these topics, or do we set up groups? Because by the time you eliminate those things and then you put these two things on commission members, the ADU guide, and not sure what the scale of the zoning code cleanup is, they become, I mean, like, so for example, we can, I think, all agree, the complete ADU guide is like a pretty minor thing, right? It's not like a notable. So this gets into this question of, for me, there are these really complex big picture questions that in 3 years on council, we don't really ever talk about here or there. If we're not going to do any of them, then I would love to revisit, is there anything more that we could do here about the big picture questions? Since I don't know what guidance we're getting yet from the council, I think I would say I'd like to check in about it next meeting after we have some sense of what's going on with the goals.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I'm just nervous that we're never going to talk about these things, that we're going to go years and years and years and everything is going to fall into black holes, and it feels like that's happened in some cases. So I'm saying it out loud publicly. Not that I have any disagreement with anything that Meg put in here, unless all these things get kicked down the road and we don't talk about them, in which case I'd like to be able to acknowledge that I'm going to bring them back up here and hope that maybe we could talk about them.
Yeah, and planning is the place where you're looking towards the future, looking at this community and trying to plan for it.
Well, and so it is actually your very role, Gavin, to take something like Keith Sally back to council and put it on a goals. Put it on your goals to say, hey, I'm on planning commission and here's the thing that we'd like to do. So that then, because that is going to require engineering, it's going to require all kinds of things, lots of money thrown at it. It's not just a let's go talk and see what nice ideas we have. It's money and staff time. So if that then becomes a village goal, money and staff time become allocated, and then it happens.
And that's the piece that I was going to add on to my I think complication with this. I like having goals and planning things out ahead of time. I think for this, it's complicated for me and cumbersome because I have like a whole different. I get my work from the village manager, and like that workload is the capacity of it. Comes into question, like what my role is not clear. And I like to get things done too, so it's like if I'm assigned to something, I'm going to do it all the way to the end and get it done. Like that's just how so I also hesitate to make sure like everyone else is on board and before I fully commit and put my name by it, because I'm going to make it happen, it's going to get done.
And that's exactly why I'm talking about out loud, because in lieu of there being clarity, all of the time gets taken by the responsive work and or the work that is clearly directed by the village manager. So that when we don't have, for example, a housing committee that's creating and setting priorities collectively, I think, personally, that I would prioritize trying to get affordable housing, for example, at Glass Farm over Keith Sally. But Glass Farm's not on here because it's in that, like, well, I think it's something that's relevant, but it's not in any clear place. So I'm just trying to use this as a place to say, hey, yeah, if it seems like it's anywhere in the realm of planning and it's a big picture kind of thing, let's create a little bit of space to talk about it. And to the extent that these are priorities, let's mention them so that all of the work doesn't just become responding to developers, responding to, and especially now with the economic development work that you'll be drawn to as well, there's going to be nearly a never-ending stream of responding to something. I mean, think about the things happening at Antioch College alone. That could be a full-time job for the next, who knows how long. So this is where hopefully we could get ahead of it a little bit, try to be less responsive and more proactive, and because we don't talk about that anywhere else at this point, not at council, there's not a housing committee, I'm just using the one little platform I got here to say, hey, I hope we talk about it someday.
One other thing about them, Scott is interested in the food truck work.
And so isn't Stephen. Oh, adding Scott onto it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
So
sorry.
which of you going to jump off? Which one of you wants to jump off that one so that Scott can get on?
Oh, you can only have two.
I can jump off.
Okay, if you want to. I mean,
I mean, I trust you guys.
Yeah.
It's just these two are like two things trying to ask the same kind of questions. Like when does quantity, or density
Sure.
become qualitatively different?
Yeah, that's like,
So, but I got plenty of things on my plate. So
No, that's fine, yeah, because
Yeah.
I've been harping about this for a while too. 'Cause
Yeah.
I just want
Okay.
clarification where we're allowed, how many we actually have. That way we can see that, and then we can kind of see what we want to do from that point,
yeah.
Okay.
What I'm wondering on both of these is what's actually the next step? Because, the last meeting, I indicated, yeah, I'm interested in working on both of them. But then, back a couple weeks ago, I was wondering, well, what does that mean? And it's not clear to me yet what the first step is and what the stages are in dealing with it.
It'd be great. Research other communities, look at other people's legislation, look at other people's zoning codes. Call up some folks, see how it's working for them. Find like communities. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that Meg is not going to have time to do that's outside of what's specifically in the code and what options exist. Well, you guys can do that. You can find out what things other communities are doing.
So the way I heard it was that this was basically like we project management. So if you volunteered, so now it's the two of you got to get together and say, hey, what are we going to do? And then bring it back on TGLs and on food trucks.
Well, like I said, I think I just stated the starting point. It's just like, how many food trucks do we have here now? And what the locations are, because that way we have information we can compare to when we talk to somebody else.
I was going to say with transient guest lodging too, you may actually need to look outside of Ohio. You're going to need communities that are small, similar, that attract a lot of tourists.
Yeah.
And there aren't many like us in Ohio, but there are some others in other communities, other states. Because, you hear about it nationally. You hear about some of the large ones, but you want to look at some small ones that are, what have they done? There may
Right.
be some in
Right.
Ohio.
I actually saw this place by accident when I was driving trucks, and I thought it was very Springish. They even had a canoe livery right downtown, Canal Winchester. That seemed like it was a very touristy kind of area. That might be a place y'all
There
could
actually
look at.
are a few in Ohio.
Yeah.
There's that, and there's some places outside of, the stuff that I've read in recent years, outside of Athens, outside of Cleveland, there are a handful of smaller
That's a good
places.
start point for you on that one.
Yeah, we can talk more about it later, and actually, I want to talk to, outside the meeting, talk to Meg a little more about some of this, but okay.
And because you're managing these projects and not giving the planning and zoning administrator a bunch of extra work, come up with your questions. Be very clear about what it is that you need to know that is Meg stuff, and get that one email together with the, these are the things we need to know before we go do work ourselves, things, because what often ends up happening is it comes bouncing back and forth to, oh, you told us that, now we need this. Ooh, can you find out this for us? So it really needs to be, these are the things we need to know. Once you tell us that, we're off and running, and we'll be back at a meeting to share what we've learned.
Okay.
Make sense?
Well, I could write up an email for Meg, and I'll include you in it, Gary, so you can see what it is, but it's just for the food trucks. The transient guest thing, that's y'all's baby.
My one little FYI on the TGLs, I sent a message to Meg earlier today, but there was an article in the Dayton Daily News, I think it was Sunday. The state is back to considering removing, so essentially Airbnb and Vrbo and the companies, they advocate to remove any restrictions.
Of
So
course.
shockingly, they can make more money.
And they can buy all the rental
And
property.
so, I don't know about that, but yeah, so they're pushing for making it so there's statewide removal of restrictions. So it's back, that was there before, and now it's back again. So I think it's something worth watching, because it would eliminate
Yeah.
all of our changes, which
But
opens up its own.
They can't back fill it, can they?
That's what
I mean,
they're trying
you've got
to do.
already, if
It
you're
it
a
opens up
charter-
the home rule questions are significant, but there are lots of other places that the state legislature is pushing up against the home rule issues.
And that may be something that you want to give input to the
Existing.
state about.
We have
Village.
we have in the past given notification. I just saw it this morning, so I haven't yet said anything to anyone on council about it. But in the past, we have, and it was somewhat concerning that in the message to, or in the article, they said there were 200 proponent testimonies for eliminating restrictions, which is very likely means that there was a organized effort to get the proponent testimony and no one knew about it on the opponent side.
Second time this has come up.
There were a couple opponent voices there, and I didn't go in and look at the information on the legislature site to see, but it specifically noted that there were a couple hundred proponents, which is a lot.
Yeah, it is.
There you go.
Okay, is there any other discussion that we need to have?
Nope.
Okay, then, I guess there's no new business. How about agenda planning? Do we know for our next meeting? We want to report back from the council goals.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, I'm hoping that can be like an agenda item, not just the report, not just like the reading of the thing at the beginning, so that we can chat about it for a few
Put you
minutes.
on the agenda.
Cool.
And you don't think at this point, Meg, that there's anything coming up for us?
Right,
Okay, good. Probably it's all going to come at once.
right, yeah. Seems to do that.
Okay, and then for those who are going to be going on the tour with Windsor, you're going to let us know the times for Wednesday.
I sent it to you. I
you
didn't send
did?
it to Windsor. I
Okay.
said, here's who's going and this is the day, because
Okay.
you had said, can you reach out? So I sent it to you.
And so that's next week.
Yep, all right, I'll let you know. I'll be in
Okay.
touch.
Okay, then we don't have anything else, it looks like. I move we adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.